Hello, friends. This is Matt Greer. I'm the artistic director of Quintessence, a community of singers in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We are looking forward to a fantastic set of concerts this weekend, the last concert on our 36th season, concert we're calling Homeward Bound. And I'm here with my friend Tim Takach, who's joining us from Minnesota, who has one of the big pieces that we are performing on this program this afternoon. And he's joining me to talk about it. Hi, Tim.
Hi, how you doing?
I am well. How are you?
Doing very well indeed.
Very nice to see you.
You too.
And so you and I were chatting before we started recording, and you were here last summer. You were in Albuquerque last summer, kind of as an appendage to your fantastic wife, who's also a composer, Jocelyn Hagen. For our summer choral festival, we did the New Mexico premiere of her Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, and you were here with her to run tech and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a great time together. And of course, Quintessence audiences, I think, are familiar with both her music and your music because we've done a fair bit of your music. And while you were in Albuquerque and we were hanging out, you slipped me a copy of this piece of yours called, called At Home, a piece that I didn't know anything about, but I took it home and read through it and I just kind of fell in love with it. And it became the centerpiece of this concert we're giving this weekend. So first of all, thank you for that. Thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Of course, that makes me so happy that you liked it.
Yeah, we really, and the choir is loving it. So would you talk a little bit about the origins of the piece and how it came to be?
Yeah, I certainly can. So this was one of the few times I've been privately commissioned to write a piece, which doesn't happen that often. I think for me, it's usually coming from an organization or a conductor, but this was a woman who wanted to give her husband a 70th birthday present as a gift of new music. And so she approached me and wanted to talk about the theme and the texts and what it could be and the timeline and the budget and all the questions that I usually have with a conductor, was just with somebody off the street, as they say. She had heard some of my music being performed here in Minneapolis before and liked what she heard and had the idea that I'd be a good person to approach for this project. So she and her husband, I can't remember how long they had been married, but they had a very specific relationship with houses and with places, both in their home in Minneapolis and then a cabin they have in the northern part of Minnesota. But he's also a realtor. So he has a very specific relationship with buildings and homes and dwellings. And so she thought that could be the groundwork of a theme for this piece. And so getting to know her and her husband through stories and conversation, I went back and looked for texts that I thought might be a good fit for this. And I found all these Wendell Berry poems and thought, gosh, these are just so perfect. And they're pastoral and they're meaningful and they're intimate and they're so specific about place, whether it's a dwelling, like an actual structure, or just where we feel most at home. And there's a bit about family in there. So it all kind of seemed to work. And then she also wanted a uniquely commissioned poem for the piece and for her husband, Cotty. And so Julia Klatt Singer writes the third movement, which is the sort of center of the center of the piece, the very middle movement, which is called Good Bones.
Yeah, that's just what a cool commission to receive and to be able to get to know the people and their relationship and that idea of the places we live becoming important to us that's one of the lovely, lovely themes from the piece. I have to say, in thinking about just getting ready for the concert this week, you and Jocelyn were in our home when you were here last summer, and my wife Amy and I have lived in the house that we live in since 2015 or rather 2005, and we love our home. And so this has been, preparing this piece has been just kind of really, started to feel very tender about it. And then just this last week, we had to replace all of the plumbing in our house, every single pipe.
Oh my gosh.
I only mention it because I don't have as much money as I did about a week ago, and so, well, we'll talk afterwards. Maybe you guys could help me out. But
Yeah, we'll set something up online for you. Friends can
yeah,
contribute.
thank you, I appreciate it. The third movement that you mentioned, the Julia Klatt Singer movement, is so about the reality of living in a house and things that are good about that and things that go wrong. And so we've had a good laugh about that this week.
Yeah, there's that line there about how many nights we laid awake waiting for the pipes to burst. So yeah, it's very. I think that the joys and the sorrows of home ownership are sort of strewn throughout that poem. But what I love about that movement too is that it is about the dwelling, but it's also this metaphor for us and our bodies, being at home in our bodies, and how they age and they require maintenance. And one of the last lines of the poem, she says, "You are wise. You appreciate what was once straight, but now softly curves." And
Yes.
I just love that. Thinking about a house and a home and our bodies too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's really lovely. So the piece is in five movements, as you mentioned, and one of the things that's interesting about it is for mixed chorus and two woodwind instruments, flute and clarinet. And I wonder how you came to think of it in terms of the choir with those two voices.
Yeah, that was sort of a really first like gut reaction to the project when we were talking. I thought, well, the choir can be the voice of either person's relationship, or they can be sort of a third person, Greek chorus narrative. But I wanted an element that was representative of the two people in the story, this couple, Laurie and Cotty. So thinking about an instrumental duet, and the first thing
Mm,
that popped into my head were these woodwinds, the flute and the clarinet. I just thought that it felt right. I hadn't written for that combination before, so it's
mhm.
always exciting to try something new. And I just got the sound of those two instruments in my head, and I couldn't let them go. And so they sort of, in a way, are the backbone of this whole thing, and they're threaded throughout the whole thing. And they're not extra to the music.
Uh-huh.
They're stitched in and they're needed. And I feel like a lot of what the choir does rests on what these two
Mm.
obligato instruments are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually want to play a video of the first movement of the piece. And I don't know if what we're going to see, Tim, is the premiere of the piece, but I know you're familiar with the performance I'm going to play. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so this was the premiere. This was the first time that the piece was performed, and Lori, the woman who commissioned it, and her husband Cotty were sitting there in the hall listening to it, and he didn't really know anything about it up until I can't remember if it was like maybe a week out from the performance.
Mhm.
Um, but then she hadn't heard any rehearsals or anything of it, so this was all fresh and brand new to them, hearing this performance live in Minneapolis.
Lovely. So this is the first movement, which is called I Am at Home. Is there anything that you would say about it?
No, well, it's a strange text, but it fits their relationship, I think. So her husband has a deep love of travel, and sort of like skewed toward adventurous travel, and
Uh-huh.
so he likes to go out and like hike and ride his bikes places and do things. And she's very comfortable staying back in Minnesota when he does these things. So they have this separation that's built into their relationship. And this poem is interesting because it feels very romantic, and it feels very, very connected to each other. And yet the message is like, I'm okay where I am, and you should be okay where you are too. And don't come look for me. Let's just let's just enjoy our own places for a while. And I think that sense of separation and sort of carving out your own place in the world is important for any relationship. And so this is how the piece starts out with this poem.
Lovely. Okay. So this is the first movement of Tim's At Home. The movement is called I Am at Home. That's so lovely.
Thank you.
And the choir is the Singers, which is a professional choir in Minnesota. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, really lovely. Well, we have had a great time preparing it, and as I think I was saying to you before we went on and started recording, we're welcoming our clarinetist and flutist for the first time for rehearsal Thursday night. We can't wait. And just listening to that movement, you're absolutely right. It's beautiful how integral those two instruments are to what's going on. They're not extraneous at all.
Yeah, yeah, they sort of provide the backdrop and it and like the backbone for musically for what's going on. And I sort of wrote this thing from left to right. So the motives that you hear in the first movement, both in the winds and the chorus, show up here and there again throughout the piece.
Mm.
So I really feel like it's ends up being stitched together musically really well too, based on what shows up
Mhm.
in this first movement. And one of the other cool things that not sure if you've thought about this yet or not, but the fourth movement was sort of an extra thing that I wanted to write. Um, we had four poems picked out, and there was this tiny little Wendell Berry poem that I really wanted to use, and it simply
Mm.
says, "There's a day when the road neither comes nor goes, and the way is not a way but a place," and sort of like seats us in this mindset that we're sort of always moving in our places within that stream. And so that was just an extra thing I wanted to write, and ends up being a little bridge between movement 3 and 5 as a round. So the choir is singing in a round, and then in the score, the stage instructions have the winds move from front of house, like on stage, and they sort of process to the back, and they
Right.
finish the cycle behind the audience. So that's kind of a neat effect too once you get there.
Yes, I was just going to ask you about that because, of course, we've got that to look forward to in our rehearsal is figuring all that out. So thanks. Um, and actually, when I hired the flutist and the clarinetist are both good friends, and so I when I hired them, I said, just so you know, and I sent them a video clip. You will be required to move and play at the same time, and in our context, walk downstairs or whatever. But they're totally down for it.
Yeah, and
I
it's
love.
not quite marching band, but there is movement involved.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I love that fourth movement, that round, and that little text that you alluded to. And you and Jocelyn actually have written a fair number of rounds together. And
Mhm.
rounds are just so, I think they're just so inviting musically. They're just so homey. They're one of the first, it's kind of people's first experience with kind of polyphony is getting to sing rounds together. And I just love that you've done that. Do you like that challenge musically, writing a
I
line that will work that
I
way?
like I like the puzzle of it. I really
Uh-huh.
enjoy figuring out how it works and when the different voices come in. And it's for me, it's very physical on the page as I'm writing it out.
Mhm.
I know what's supposed to line up and what doesn't need to line up. And then it's a challenge of like, if I'm moving from one idea to the next, how long does it need to take before I can really invest in that new idea where the first idea is completely gone because it hangs around for a little bit longer.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this one is around in a couple different parts. So there's a round in the beginning and a round in the middle, and then we sort of collect everybody at the end in a repetition. So it was a
Mhm.
fun roadmap to make. And I remember writing the music of it and thinking this feels good, but I want to elevate the experience a bit. And I asked Jocelyn about it, and she said, "Well, have you thought about stage movement?" Not knowing anything about the project, I thought that's a good
Uh-huh.
idea. And then I'm sure she was referring to the choir, but the first thing I thought of was these two woodwinds, because then the final movement is about sort of being an empty nester and being at the end of life and sort of just living there together, just the two of you. um and so the having the flute and the clarinet walk behind and play from back there gives this very detached feel to it, like somebody has already moved on. So I like how
Right.
the stage movement helps underline the narrative thread of these poems too.
Yes. And that last movement is just so poignant. I mean, the text, the everything that you do with it, the so many choir members have told me that they have a hard time getting through that movement because it's just so poignant.
Yeah, I
So
do too.
yeah. Well, it's a marvelous piece. We can't wait to perform it, and I'm so grateful to you for passing it along and for taking a few minutes and talking about it.
Of
It's one
course.
that we have really loved preparing.
That's so great to hear. Any composer loves to hear that. But I appreciate the support. I appreciate the time you've been giving it. And you have the Southwestern premiere of At Home. So it's kind of fun too.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I'll send you the link to the live stream. We're sorry you can't be here in person, but again, we're grateful and we hope the performance pleases you. Thanks for being with us today, Tim. This Sunday and Monday, Homeward Bound, Quintessence, a Community of Singers, Sunday at 3 p.m., Monday at 7 p.m., both performances at St. John's United Methodist Church in Albuquerque. And tickets are available at quintessence-abq.com. Sunday will also be available by live stream. We hope to see you. Thank you.